As the U.S. Pacific Fleet was virtually paralyzed, Japanese forces easily advanced into Southeast Asia and the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. Pacific Fleet could not function properly due to Japan's surprise attack, so Japan became like a lion in the jungle with no enemy to challenge. As a result, by the end of March 1942, Japanese forces had controlled the western half of the Pacific Ocean, from the Kuril Islands in the north to the Solomon Islands in the south. It also came to dominate from Indochina in the east to the Indian border in the west. A huge Japanese empire was built. However, the Japanese advance stopped here. Wow, that's pretty good. It really looks like Japan has taken up 1/5 of the planet. At that time, Japanese people must have been incredibly proud of being Japanese. Oh, sorry, before long, however, Japan began to suffer defeat on several battlefields. The U.S. Navy's victory at the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942 prevented the Japanese Navy from advancing into the South Pacific. In addition, the victory of the Battle of Midway in June prevented the Japanese Navy from advancing to the east. Now, the true value of America is slowly starting to come out. Japan must have realized that little by little it has become a big problem. At that time, the national power of the United States was far superior to that of Japan, so the United States was not easily defeated by Japan. Meanwhile, on the European front, the Allies had great success. The Allies also had an advantage on the European front. The Soviets won a decisive victory over the Germans at the Battle of Stalingrad in 1942. Oh my, the Battle of Stalingrad was the fiercest battle of the World War II, and the Soviet Union did a really great job. At about the same time, in November 1942, American forces under the command of General Dwight Eisenhower landed in Morocco, North Africa, and together with the British forces under General Bernard Montgomery, drove Rommel's German forces out of Africa. Then they landed on mainland Italy via Sicily. This battle was almost the most important of World War II, and it was made into a movie. It was Rommel who used the skillful strategy like the nickname of the Desert Fox.
As the war became more favorable to the Allies, they felt the need to clarify the purpose of the war. Roosevelt and Churchill at the Casablanca Conference in Morocco in January 1943 decided the goal of war was the unconditional surrender of Germany and Italy.
Unconditional surrender was a really cool expression for the Allied powers. To the Axis powers, it was an expression of embarrassment, humiliation, and submissiveness.
In addition, the two men, together with Zhang Des of China, agreed to continue the war until Japan's unconditional surrender at the Cairo Conference in late 1943.
And at the Tehran Conference of 1943, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin promised that the Soviet Union would declare war on Japan as soon as Germany surrendered. By this time, the Allies must have felt that the war was almost coming to an end.
In the early days of the Pacific War, Japan succeeded in capturing the islands they wanted, but did not completely crush the Allied naval and air forces. The maiming and disabling of the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor was temporary. In particular, since there was no damage to the aircraft carriers, operational capability was soon restored. Fortunately, American carriers were not present when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. As a country with industrial power 10 times that of Japan, the United States quickly repaired the damage to Pearl Harbor and furthermore, spurred on strengthening its combat power for a full-fledged counterattack in 1943. The ability to quickly recover from such a surprise attack was because the United States was basically backed by its national power. Meanwhile, when Tokyo was attacked by US bombers launched from their carrier, Japan devised a double plan to completely annihilate the remnants of the Pacific Fleet. First, they would bring in a fleet of US carriers into the Coral Sea to attack, and second, seize the island of Midway. In May 1942, at the Battle of the Coral Sea, where the first ever aircraft carrier battle took place, US carrier thwarted and obstructed Japanese plans. Likewise, in the Battle of Midway in June, a decisive victory was achieved that marked a turning point in the Pacific War. The American victory at the Battle of Midway was a battle that decisively turned the tide of the Pacific War. It was a fatal battle for Japan. At Midway, the US Navy, which knew the enemy's operational plan in advance by deciphering it, fought in an advantageous position, and as a result, there was a major victory in which all 4 Japanese aircraft carriers were sunk, while the US lost only 1 carrier. Really, the Battle of Midway gave America a great victory.
Conversely, if all 4 aircraft carriers had been destroyed by surprise attack, the United States would have lost its operational capabilities for a considerable period of time.
Fortunately, the Pacific Fleet's 3 aircraft carriers, which were not in the port, were not damaged. We can see that God was on America's side. Japan's failure to bomb America's oil storage in Hawaii was Japan's fatal mistake in the Pacific War.
It was predicted that if the oil storage in Hawaii had been bombed, it would have taken the United States at least 2 more years to recover from the damage.
Thank you for watching the video, Expansion of the Japanese Empire in the Pacific Part 1, provided by History and Current Events. I'm Rebecca, Mia, Katie, Leah, and Tony have contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.